kicked me off for a second. So, but hopefully we're back in business now. So let me just make sure. I mean, we are broadcasting this live, so, you know, there are always like possible technical difficulties. But anyway, that's why I built in a little extra time. I was originally going to show a little thing on how to make s'mores, you know, in the spirit of summertime and everything. And then I looked in my cupboards and this is what I saw. And it's like, you can tell there's a lot of stuff in there, but no marshmallows or graham crackers or anything that anybody wants to eat. So decided not to go for that. Yeah, that didn't quite go as planned. But let's see. So we've got tonight, just to introduce everybody really quickly, the Dollhouse Thieves are going to be joining us and playing a set for about 20 minutes. And then we've got Jeamus Wilkes, who does a podcast called Jeamus Wilkes After Midnight, and he'll be reading something for us, as well as Shannon Lawrence, who also goes by the Warrior Muse. And so, you know, she's here ready to join the broadcast too. And last but not least, we'll be having Stephen Graham Jones join us. And for those of you who aren't familiar, he's actually a local horror writer. Well, actually, I mean, Jeamus and Shannon are also local horror writers. But Stephen actually has a new book out called The Only Good Indians, which, like all of his stuff, is extremely creepy. And I actually made the mistake of reading this one, mapping the interior at around 2 a.m. on like a Saturday night. And with that and the pandemic going on, I just, you know, don't recommend like reading his books after midnight unless you want to have like an even creepier experience than normal. Which is saying a lot with Stephen Graham Jones' books. So, okay. Let's see. I think that's actually about it for my announcements. I ended up running ahead on myself a bit there. So let's see. So with Nikki and Luke, you know, from the Dollhouse Thieves, are you two ready to go? Or okay, cool. So I'll go ahead and bring you up in the screen in the stream here. So yeah, do you just want to go ahead and, you know, introduce yourselves? I'll get myself off of here.
Sure.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. We're Luke and Nikki of the Dollhouse Thieves. Thanks for having us. If you hear any children's songs in the background, that's our sweet baby girl listening to her iPad songs.
It's also kind of creepy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. In the spirit of this wonderful campfire theme, we're going to be playing. Oh, do you want more? Okay. We're going to be playing with the acoustic guitar, and we're going to be playing some creepy songs for you, as well as some new songs that are inspired by the nighttime and some spooky things that are happening, both, I guess, socially and with your dreams and whatnot. So before we get started, do you want to give me some like spooky sounds? I'm going to go get the baby some more graham crackers and I'll get started right real quick. Writing letters to those useless years. Remember how you buried them beneath all of the years. You can wonder where she is now, and I'll try to understand those tears. Seeing figures, how they haunt you every room. Try to be there, but they only seem to follow you. And I know I can't replace her, but you gotta understand my feelings. Yeah, I'm a plain old shadow to your I'm gonna play old shadow to your reassure me that she's gone in your past. Oh, you hold me and you say you're moving away too fast. And you whisper when you're sleeping, and the name you like to cry, it isn't mine. Oh, it's never mine to let me go. You're too dangerous to love. You see me, but it's not me you're thinking of. It's been pretty long here in the morning, and I know that what ain't cutie for time. And I'm gonna play no shadow to your ghost. I'm gonna play no shadow to your Okay, that's trombone. That's our song "Shadow to Your Ghost."
Yeah, you can find that one on like all the stuff where the music plays. The streaming stuff, then.
That's right. So this next one is a new song. We're going to be doing a lot of new songs for you. Everything tonight we're doing is an original song. And this one is about getting out inspired by a campfire. Hi. This is inspired by being at the campfire during camping. We love camping. I think this, you can't really beat this state for camping or this area of the country. It's just like wonderful. So it's about looking at the night sky and feeling comforted by that. So it's going to feature accordion. Seasons change. Where did it go? Seems that time never moves slowly. And to leave, get out of town. Find a quiet little place where we can slow it all down. And if I'm meant to leave, I know I wanna be found. Where I can stare at the night sky and feel like it's alright again. Wake up, my dear, hurry, let's go. Can't be late, gotta make sure. And we gotta find time, I gotta let it all fly. I gotta get it on my chest. I gotta give my mind a rest. I wanna go back to a place where I can call my own, where I could stare at the night sky and feel like I'm alright. Well, is everybody crazy? Is everybody scared? Am I living in a society where I'm not so prepared? My job is overwhelming me. I'm not the same woman I used to be. Oh, I just want to stare at the night sky and feel like it's alright. Oh, it's alright. Okay, so that was our new song. I think it's called Night Sky so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one is actually a song I wrote. It's a lullaby for the dark that I wrote when I was studying music therapy, intending for children in the NICU. and it was supposed to be a lullaby that I wanted to write to comfort parents because it can be a really scary time when your children are in the NICU. And this is one also that I wrote as a child. I was pretty afraid of the dark, and sometimes if I watch horror movies now or read horror books,
Yeah.
I still need to sleep with the light on.
Yeah, I want to check out that scary book, by the way.
Yes. So, do you need more graham
I
crackers?
got it.
Okay. Bunny grams, man, I get it.
Mhm.
So this song is about, it's called A Lullaby for the Dark. It's about scaring away witches and ghosts and goblins. And it's supposed to be a gentle lullaby song. It's going to feature the melodica.
All is quiet and all is calm. Night's a gentle, sweet lullaby. And while my baby is off to sleep, I will sing her a lullaby. Ooh, nothing to fear. It's only the night that's here. Ooh, I'll be right here. So close your eyes and sleep, sleep. Darkness is only the absence of light. It will be Ghosts and goblins can't reach you now, not while we're singing a lullaby. And all the witches are off to sleep, they're under a spell from our lullaby. Ooh, nothing to fear, it's only light that's here. Ooh, I'll be right here, so close your eyes and sleep, sleep. Darkness is only the absence of light. It will be
Yay, it's a very spooky lullaby.
Spooky lullaby.
Yeah.
This is our cat. She never makes appearances when we play. I think she liked that song.
Guess so.
I had to be careful. I had to turn the piano up because she likes to walk on our keys.
Yeah, do you need more? So the next one, if you want to talk about the next song, I'm going to help our daughter.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Our next song is like the first one that we played. This is one that we released on an album a little while back. We're a band from Denver, Colorado, and so happy to be here. So this song is called "Not a Soul, Not a Sound," and yeah, it tells a story. How would you describe the story?
It's a serious song. It involves going to a funeral, so we thought that it would be appropriate for this campfire spooky theme. So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
felt no emotions, ain't no way to get down. I just wanted to shake you right out from the ground. You were soft, honey's baby red, honey dudes, and oh, I believe this is what you would choose. Now your family is broken, they're counting out your name. How lucky for you, now you can't be the shame or not a soul and not a sound. Company about if Jesus must be proud, and now it's still cry all the time, crying just for you. Well, maybe you wanna live too, well, baby, I believe. That didn't you not protein your 3 weeks too. You were surrounded by the roses and all those pictures of you. Ain't it funny how we born to be silly that we care? You think of all these things you like, you're not even there, no boy. And not a soul, not a sound. Company about you, Jesus must be proud, and now it's still cry all the time, crying just for you. Well, maybe you will live too up and happy for you. Now the funeral is over and there's nothing left to say. We shuffle to our cars and go our separate ways. The sun will be on shining days, doesn't matter if you're gone, 'cause the world is gonna spin, and without you we'll go on and on and on and on. Without you we'll go on and on and on and on and on. Without you we'll go on and on and on and on and on. Without you we'll go on and on and on. On and on, without you, on and on and on, and on and on. Not a soul and not a sound, they witness when you fell. Now baby, there's a hell for all the little girls and all of the boys who give up and take their lives, and they make their mamas cry and leave us wondering why. Oh.
Thank you. Yes, it is a cheery funeral song. I was exploring the theme of having lyrics that are dark, but a melody and progression and rhythm that are not dark. So yeah, it's a very interesting kind of songwriting, I guess. But I had a friend in college who said that was her favorite style of song, and when I had another friend who passed away, and I wrote that song. I was pretty angry, and I didn't want it to be too angry or gloomy, I guess, in the comments. So yeah, but yeah, thanks for tuning in. This is really fun.
Thank you. Yeah.
Don't think we have. Do we have time for one more, or do you want to just keep going? Oh, sorry, I can't hear you, Amy. I'm sorry.
Like a sign.
I know.
I'm unmuting
Oops.
myself.
No. Sorry, Shannon. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Hang on. Oh my gosh. I am just a hot mess. Okay. Got you back. All right. All right. Yeah. So I was just saying you can do one more if you want.
Great.
Perfect.
We'd love to.
Sorry, what?
I'm always muting myself. It's like a running joke on here. So yeah, but go ahead.
Would y'all like a more gentle, slower song, or would you like a more upbeat song?
Are we getting? I guess, we don't have opinions so far. Yeah.
Cool.
So
We could do Oregon or Colorado.
Okay, good. We had these ones as well.
That's true. Let's do it. Let's do one more.
Okay.
Yeah, familiar one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do Colorado.
Sounds good.
So this is also meant to be a camping song.
It's true.
Loading up the truck and packing our things to go. Leaving behind all the faces that we know. We're gonna find our peace of mind in Colorado.
Yeah, we found us a place to stay. We got a place to go. As for what we'll do, yeah, we don't know. We're gonna find our peace of mind in Colorado.
We got a request for downbeats. Let's make it minor now.
Madison's fun, but the winters are just too cold. And we knew of a place that was nice where we could go. We're gonna find our peace of mind in Colorado. Oh, yeah.
The people like to ski, like to drink, like to smoke it up. And some know it shines and it builds that soul.
We're gonna find our peace of mind in Colorado. Oh, yeah. Peace of mind in Colorado. All I need is you by my side everywhere I go. You take away my worries and all my load. You help me find my peace of mind in Colorado. Wear some moving little clothes next to me.
Oh, you are miles to the mountains and all we see. We're gonna find our peace of mind in Colorado.
Oh, we're gonna find our peace of mind in Colorado. Yeah,
We're gonna find our peace of mind
in Colorado.
I had myself muted again, but I unmuted now. Yay. So, yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sorry you weren't able to get in-person applause, but I mean, it seems like you've gotten, quite a bit of virtual applause at least.
Yay, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's see. So we're going to go ahead and I'll let you guys go ahead and take your break and maybe see you at Q&A later.
Cool.
Okay. So let's see. Next up, we have Jeamus. Let me just hopefully not have anyone appear on here who's not supposed to be on here and not mute myself or anything in the process. Okay, so hey, Jeamus.
How are you?
Good. Just over here doing my thing as I do.
Thanks for inviting me tonight.
Of course. So what have you got for us?
I am going to be reading a story titled "The Music of Vengeance." So it's we might be taking a bit of 180 from that awesome music that we just heard. No, but it is very much in the spirit of a campfire story. So that's why I picked it, and
nice.
that's what I'll be reading tonight.
Is there a theme of revenge? I love revenge.
Yeah, it's actually what I've called this is actually a post-apocalyptic sequel to the Pied Piper of Hamelin, just in case you ever needed that. So
I think I need that. I think
okay.
I always need it in my life. So
well, excellent. Then I'll read it tonight.
All right. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and let you go.
Okay. All right, this is The Music of Vengeance by Jeamus Wilkes. As human beings, we tend to overcomplicate how the world works and what constitutes success. We buy into the bullshit from leaders, political and religious, that we must work together for a better future and the hope of greener pastures that lie just beyond the next hill or mountain. What leaders fail to realize is that some of us know what life really boils down to: keeping warm. A decent coat can keep you warm enough to find your next meal, and sometimes a pair of shoes that fit rather well. The only reason I lived through the night that the alley rats ate my face was because of a woolen coat. I had no shoes that night, nor pants or underwear for that matter. I only possessed a coat. When I awoke in the smell of my own vomit to see two rats fighting over some pinkish meat that turned out to be the bulk of my nose, I was as warm as a bear cub in a mother's den. Now that was the year of the rats, when the rodents flooded my village. The same year alcohol was my bedmate, alleyways my bed, and filth my pillow. Our scientific resources were, and still are, limited to the point of near non-existence. So determining why rats overwhelmed our households, barns, and granaries consists mostly of guessing coupled with superstition. Whatever the cause, the rat catcher seemed to be the solution to our problems, a solution to a people who needed no more reasons to suffer from want, and a solution to me who wanted to be rid of those who ate my face. I learned to bridle my need for revenge on rodents because of Father Aierliano. Father Aierliano was an Augustinian monk who eventually quit the priesthood. Father Liano taught me the most valuable lesson that the generally fruitless enterprise of religion would ever impart to my brain, and what might be loosely referred to as my soul or spirit. And that was this. He said, "The music of vengeance is only silenced by penance with teeth." I had to ponder that. The working proletarian translation: revenge only goes away by actions that help others outside of your own personal orbits and habits. Now, that is a goal worth fighting for, rather than illusory grass that possesses an impossible green that I will never see in my lifetime. Before the wars turned most of our schools into burned out buildings and our teachers into trench diggers and frontline targets, I devoured my education in the same manner those rats devoured my nose cartilage. I read every book I could find, a habit I still keep to. Yesteryear, I read by lamplight in a warm room with the sounds of my father's snores. Today, I read by the light from trash barrels further occluded by another luxury I cannot seem to give up: cigarettes. Father Liano was my literature and theology instructor the first 6 years of my education. The last time I saw him, he was in a pile of corpses stacked room high. It was in the woodshed of my farming youth. There were such stacks. And to see human shells relegated to a state of less value than firewood is numbing rather than horrifying. If God exists, and he is merciful in any minute area of his infinitely big and hard heart, he had better damned well have seen that Liano was cremated before rot set in any further. The reason I take pains to relay this information is so that the recipient of this tale understands the events that led up to now. Now, as in the now that burns hot with the fires of war that do not seem to be dying anytime soon. A generation has been born in these circumstances, and those that survive know nothing except ignorance, want, and occasional tides of numbness. Souls akin to mine are tortured because we knew better times. It is now that I am in pursuit of the rat catcher, once savior of our village and now stealer of our children. His services for rat catching consisted of creating a sonar device constructed from leftover American electronics and Russian know-how. It lured the rats out of the city and right into the sea to drown, a fate they so richly deserved. Ratcatcher was highly celebrated with song, drink, and an allowance to bed our women as he pleased. And when he had his fill and became bored, he wanted what every soldier of fortune fool eventually wants: money. After realizing we possessed little to no currency, a toilet paper currency devalued by the asswipe of war, he exacted his own revenge. His sonar device was tweaked to lure our children, the littlest ones who could walk up to those who maybe 4 or 5 years survived. Lured away and into the rat catcher's mountainside den, a ransom note written in the blood of one of our little ones, or so the rat catcher claimed, was tied to a dying horse he sent into our village. The worst part of this story, a moment even worse than the events to come, is the time I glimpsed in the general cowardice of my village. Men of prime age were mostly gone or were lame in the head or body. The remainders were worse than retracting hermit crabs, feigning illness as their jellyfish spinal column came floating to the surface. I was in the category of the disfigured but useful, my nose and right eyelid gone, and into the bellies and excreta of rats. My cheeks bore the pockmarks of rat teeth rather than childhood acne. The scars on my arms were not bullet wounds, but the apparently healed tissue from rodent nibbling. My 3 years as a special operations agent, that's code for dirty trickster, qualified me to do what nobody else would do, even if they could. And that is track, locate, and destroy the rat catcher. There was an assumption he killed all of our children. But if I was to find them, certainly a reward would be provided equal to the value of the number of children I brought back. A man who does not kill himself after his face has been eaten away by rats is surely capable of surviving anything, let alone the sorcery of a sound engineer who has found a way to lure away lower brains. The hike to the rat catcher's den in the mountainside was 2 days at a steady clip. I spread it out into 3 so that I would have time to think and pan for gold. Now, by panning for gold, it's what my military unit called fishing for cigarettes and refuse, or captured supplies or corpses. My first day was punctuated by entries into this diary and scavenging among the detritus of an ambushed platoon. It netted me 15 cigarettes, a few disposable lighters, that's another rare gift, and enough dried bread and jerky to last for the hike to and from the den. Now, the second day netted me some pistol ammunition and a large hunting knife superior to the rusty toothpick I owned. The third day netted me nothing but camping inside an overturned van as shelter from sleet that pounded the mountainside. Now, I'd eventually pass, but I would be arriving at the den at dusk. As I got closer, the mountain trail that skirted the den's entrance was decorated with crucified soldiers, those captured by the guerrillas and displayed as a warning to not continue to Nichu Tinu Pass. The pass was another 3 to 5 miles, and I had no need for that. The hole that was barely higher than a man and twice in width told me that I was at the rat catcher's den. As I got closer, the flaming rat head symbol was painted childlike on the walls of the damp and dripping entrance. The cold, a frost giant's breath biting a witch's tip. I put out my cigarette and flared my nostrils. Underneath the moldy heath and animal droppings, there was a distinct firewood smell coming from deep within the cave den, carrying with it a desolation and the faint rancidity of fat oil. Fat oil was a last resort burning fuel to extend the life of firewood because of the rotten stench emitted when burned. Even the most jaded soldier burnouts disliked the smell. Soldiers who were used to rather horrifying sensations in their battlefield and marching experience. I removed the safeties on my semi-automatic rifle and revolver. As in all of my experience, I was still slow at the single action of clicking off a safety and firing. I'd been taking chances with most things in this short and rather miserable life, let alone with weapons. The rifle slung over my shoulder and the pistol holstered, I went forward, casting the small beam of a battery-powered lantern I'd found in the backpack of a dead teenage girl. Its pink Hello Kitty logo was a sharp contrast to the gray and green colorations of my dirty fatigues. Its beam was long enough to see 5 steps or so ahead. After a few minutes, I turned it off when I saw the first small flickers of distant torches. In spite of the many myths ascribed to him, the rat catcher could not see in the dark. As I rounded the muddy corner is when I saw the first torch. Its light fell on the rat catcher. I recognized his well-fed and squatty physique from when the village first employed his services. At that time, he was rather well-shaven and flowery smelling. Now, he was naked, dirty, hairy, and smiling with metal-capped teeth. "I smelled you from a mile outside the cave, soldier. Your stink is worse than the rats that brought your village to its knees." His appearance was sudden and made me too slow in going for my pistol. Before I could draw it, he grabbed the torch and threw it at me. In ducking, I slipped in the mud and fallen ashes licking my face on the fallen torch. When I got back up and held the torch in front of me, he was already gone. I proceeded forward to find him, pistol drawn. Cinders fell from the torch, fireflies displaying my sluggishness. I was cursing this when on the path below I saw metal grating wedged into the mud, a makeshift sewer drain. The torch glow showed me what was below the grate. Writhing, squirming, walking on top of each other and squeaking, I stared into the faces of twitching and muddy rats for what seemed like many minutes, when I realized that the faces were human and those of children. Clicking the safety back on my rifle, I used the barrel to pry the grate upward with a sucking sound as it freed from the mud. I helped up 5 children who were quivering and huddling around me when the metallic smile of the rat catcher flickered in the torch glow. I pretended to not see him, as he believed he was still hidden out of the glow range. After that first child screamed at him is when a flurry of actions took place. My pistol exploded, the flare from the barrel momentarily lighting the cave as the rat catcher fell forward, reaching for my feet. I fired again, his head exploding and showering all over us in crimson and gore. I snubbed the nose of my bullet so that their entrance and exit leaves no sign of mercy. But it does make a big mess. In a few moments, there was only a crackling torch, whimpering children, and a twitching sound engineer who died in the recesses of his fucked up den. And slowly the children began to approach him, pushing him, kicking him. Their cat-like bodies jumped every time his body twitched. Then they became bolder. Soon, I knew what getting my face eaten by rats looked like. What I missed in a drunken slumber, I witnessed in the cold dark of a cave that is probably worse than the hell that I am going to someday. As the children began to consume him, I wondered if there were any more rats. Yes, rats. Because I was positive my mind was reworking history. Surely this man led our children into the sea, and my village sent me to bring the rats back that he imprisoned. For the length of at least a dozen cigarettes and nearly all of the torch's life, I witnessed the feast of the damned, the feast of us, and the music of vengeance never sounded sweeter. The end.
Now it sends me a notification whenever I'm muted. I love it. Okay. So it's getting to know me. But anyway,
Okay.
yes, that was very creepy, Jeamus. So, when I can't sleep tonight, I'll just think about you.
All right. Mission accomplished.
So that's horrifying too, I'm sure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. So next we have Shannon Lawrence, and Shannon fairly recently had yet another short story published. She gets stuff published all the time. I don't think she sleeps. I don't know. She's got teenagers at home, I think, and like works and everything. So I don't know how she does what she does. And she looks fabulous. She's got a flower going on in her hair tonight. Let's see. Oh, there she is. All right, so yeah,
Hi.
here. Hi.
Yeah, the flowers to hide the crazy curls that are over here because it's humid outside.
Okay, so today is a crazy hair day.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I mean, I meant to, what's funny is nobody ever wants what they have. Like I always wanted curly hair. And everybody that I knew who had curly hair was like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
And,
My mom has like stick straight hair and super fine. Then my dad had thick curly hair, right? And then I got a mix. So I got super fine curly hair. So it does what it wants when it wants.
Man. Okay. Yeah. So you've got the teenagers, you've got the curly hair, you've got everything.
I've got 4 cats. So you may see some of those during this too. So far, they haven't been overly curious like usual.
Okay, so we could have more cat cameos. That's very fitting.
There could be some appearances.
Okay, awesome. Well, as long as we don't get any ghosts, I think I don't know. Maybe people want that. I'm not sure. You never know what people are looking for. So I guess we'll see what happens. But anyway, I'll let you do your story. What do you have for us tonight?
So I'm reading The Blue Mist because it's all about campers who don't take advice.
Sounds good.
So if a weird little old man tells you not to go into the woods and spend the night, then you really shouldn't.
But then nothing would happen.
That's true. It's boring. And this is actually based off of a, I don't know, an old wives' tale or something in Estes Park. So I kept reading about it, the Blue Mist, and then it never said what happened when the Blue Mist came. So I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's figure out what it does.
All right. Well, I look forward to it.
Okay. All right. The old prospector awoke to the sound of agonized screams outside his modest log cabin. He grabbed his pillow and wrapped it around his head, burying his face in the lumpy mattress to wait for them to stop. The cold enveloped him, chilling him to the bone. The sound stopped within 15 or so minutes. He released the pillow and groaned, mumbling to himself, "Why can't they ever die quietly?" The next morning, the prospector, Jim Guffey by name, woke up and began his morning after ritual. He'd go out to locate the remains, but only once the fog burned off. It was too easy for the blue mist to sneak up on a soul when visibility was low. The remains would keep. Jim had a small twinge of guilt, as he often did on mornings like this, but it passed quickly. He couldn't have helped, could in fact only have died alongside them. It was better this way. Besides, he'd tried to warn them. Many years ago, he tried harder to intervene. His last attempt had involved a family with small children. Even now, he couldn't shake the image of that sweet, innocent little boy. He'd tried to warn them, as he always did in those days. They'd been polite to his face, but he'd heard the wife whispering as they walked off into the woods, "That's that crazy prospector, Pete or Jim or whatever his name is. I guess he's right about him being crazy. The sheriff did warn us." He'd figured he'd done his service of warning them. He certainly couldn't force them to leave. He'd tried in the past to frighten these people away by being menacing and crazed, threatening to shoot them. All that had accomplished was time in the local lockup and a stint in the mental ward. Even the threat of crazy prospector Jim wasn't enough to keep people off this mountain, and he'd come home to broken windows and graffiti, his place trashed. His dear Bessie, a friendly and harmless dog, had been unharmed but terrified. She was hiding under the bed when he got there, though he'd left her out to forage for her meals when the sheriff had come to take him away. This one time, though, the time he'd tried hardest of all to help, he'd heard the screams when they began that night, had actually been sitting up waiting for them, unable to get that child's face out of his mind. Cherubic round cheeks, large brown eyes, and gently curling hair. He couldn't have been more than 4 or 5. What were his parents thinking, dragging him out for an overnight in these rugged Rocky Mountains? As the screams sounded, he found he could distinguish their owners. Mom's higher-pitched screams had sounded first, becoming guttural before dying out. The little girl was next, followed closely by her daddy. There was something about a man's genuine scream of pain and fear that sent chills up a man's spine, even a man who was accustomed to the screaming by now. Well, as much as anyone could become accustomed to the sounds of pain, terror, and death. He didn't hear the boy's screams, but figured he'd probably been first. He was, after all, the easiest possible target to whatever it was that inhabited that damned mist. Normally, Jim would have had his face buried in his mattress, Bessie shivering beside him on the bed, her waves of terror working their way up his leg, straight into his soul. That night, though, he'd felt he needed to do his penance for being too big a coward to do anything, so he'd sat up and waited. In some strange way, he felt it was a tribute to them that their last moments not go anonymously into the velvet depths of the night. It was as he went to take that very last drop of whiskey that he heard it. At first, he couldn't believe his ears, figured it was the firewater whispering in his ear, but no. When he held perfectly still and listened, there it was, clear as day. That little boy's voice. "Mama, Mommy, where are you?" How was it possible? No matter, he'd shot up out of his chair and run out of that cabin in his stocking feet, Bessie close behind him as he grabbed his shotgun and went in search of the boy. There was no time to think, just pure adrenaline and instinct as he pounded through the snow-covered terrain into the trees, into that eerie blue mist. At first, the voice seemed to get farther and farther away. Every time Jim stopped to figure out where it was coming from, it switched direction. The blue mist caused sounds to bounce around, muffled them. He'd correct his course and run on, not noticing the bloody trail he left behind himself as the stones cut his frozen feet. That tyke must be terrified in a freezing cold, one step up from frostbite for certain. Finally, the voice had grown louder and louder, closer to him. He'd slowed, not wanting to scare the boy further. As he came around a particularly large pine, he saw the boy's jacket, curls bouncing as he walked, pajama pants with little duckies on them sticking out of the bottom of the jacket. "Boy, come on over here," he'd whispered. The boy hadn't turned, hadn't responded at all, other than to call for his poor dead mama. He'd figured it must be shock. Jim had approached him more closely, finally laying a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder and turning him toward him. Jim spoke gently as he turned him, wanting to comfort him, but knowing an old prospector must be completely inept at the task. "Listen, son, you need to come back to my cabin with me right quick. There are bad things in these woods, but it's safe in my cabin. Come along with me. I mean no harm. Bessie here would love to be petted." But as the boy had turned, Bessie had crept backward, back arched, hair standing on end along her spine. A low growl had begun to rumble up from her chest as she backed away. "Now cut that out, girl. You'll scare him." When the boy turned to face him, he realized exactly why Bessie was so frightened. The boy's face was gone, just bloody meat staring back at him, one eye dangling by a cord. "Mommy?" Jim screamed, almost dropping his gun as he backpedaled away from the child's corpse. Bessie moved in front of him, protectively, her growl deepening. As Jim continued to back away, she reversed, almost staying in front of him, but keeping pace. The boy walked toward them, still uttering that one word, so innocent, so harmless. Jim's back met a tree and he yelped, startling Bessie, who began to bark, a vicious sound he'd never heard from her before. He grabbed her collar and pulled her with him, and he turned to flee, terrified of turning his back on the creature, but knowing it was the only way to get away fast enough to save them. As soon as they began to run, the thing ran also, its footfalls pounding faster and faster behind them. Gone was the pretense that this was a small child. Horrifying shrieks issued from its gaping maw, causing the hair on Jim's neck to stand up as the goose flesh tightened ever more. It sounded like a maelstrom of every scream he'd ever heard out here, and then some. Bessie was ahead of him now, turning her head to look for him and see that he followed. The pounding footsteps were right behind him when he remembered the shotgun. He dove to the side and tumbled to put a little distance between him and the creature, then drew himself up into a crouched position, bringing the gun up as he did so. It walked toward him, pace slowing. A grotesque grin stretched the remnants of meat that had once been lips, and its tongue lolled out of its mouth. Jabbering sounds came from it, no semblance of language anymore. The fingers of those tiny hands had elongated and fused together, forming 3 long talons. Its feet had done the same, tearing through the padded feet of the ducky pajamas. "Eat lead, cocksucker," he said as he pulled the trigger. His aim was sure. He'd been living out here a long time. The blast hit the thing directly in the face, shredding the muscle that still hung there and sending the tongue to the ground with a plop. Still, the creature came forward. He blasted it again. Again, each hole stopped it for only a second, and he realized with dawning horror that he'd backed himself up against a rock outcropping. There was nowhere to go but through that creature, and it was almost on top of him. That was when Bessie leapt on the thing, snarling and biting. He watched in shock at first as she took it down to the ground, tearing at its neck, its face, anything she could get to. It wrestled back, talons sinking into her sides. She yelped but stood strong, ripping at it. Its jabbers became high-pitched wheezes and guttural grunts as they rolled across the snowy ground. Jim pulled himself up and ran, calling for Bessie to come with him. "Bessie, come on, girl, come home." He made it home safely, alone, slamming the door, and behind him when he realized she wasn't coming. He'd huddled in a corner of the cabin, waiting for the thing to come for him, hoping to hear Bessie pawing at the door, but neither one had shown. He'd fallen into an exhausted, nightmare-riddled sleep just after dawn when the light filtered in his windows and let him know it was over. The next day he'd gone out as usual when the sun burned off the low cloud cover. He'd found poor Bessie's remains, which hadn't amounted to much, then tracked down the entire family and given them proper burial. He'd long ago realized that the sheriff would pin these murders on him if he discovered them, so it was easier to just bury them, clean up, and document what he could in case someone came looking for them. He'd been questioned about missing tourists a few times, but rants about the blue mist quickly convinced them to leave, shaking their heads and mumbling about how crazy he was. No, there had been nothing he could do then, and there was nothing for him to do now but clean up after the creature. Today was like any other day, just with a couple extra chores was all. When he looked outside, it was bright, no fog in sight. Even the sky above was clear, with nary a fluffy cloud to be seen. He put his feet in his boots, several of the toes missing after that long-ago night, thanks to frostbite, laced them up and gathered his coat around him. No need to zip it up. It looked to be a fine day out there. It wasn't hard to track down the remains of last night's campers. He simply followed the 3-toed paw prints and ultimately the bloodstains and chunks of flesh to the inevitable end. It was easier to deal with the remnants of the mist in the summer when the ground was thawed, and he set to work immediately. Despite the thawed ground, it still took some time to dig. There were the remains of what seemed to be 4 adults, possibly 5. Jim leaned against his shovel, using the back of his hand to swipe at the sweat running down his temple. He stretched his back, working out the kinks that had formed as he bent over the shovel, then turned to get the water bottle and froze. There, behind him, creeping out of the trees, was the blue mist. He dropped the shovel and started to run, but as he turned around a rock formation in the direction of his house, he saw that the mist had already crept between him and home. He jerked around to run in the other direction, but it was everywhere now, swirling around his legs, blocking his way. He'd just have to go through it. That's when the little boy stepped out of the mist. He was whole, his face once again cherubic, his hands just sweet little hands, pudgy and dimpled, no talons. His feet were tucked back into untorn footies. He smiled and held up his arms, miniature mittens dangling from the sleeves of his padded jacket. "Get you gone now. I know what you are." "Mommy?" "Go back into your damn mist." Jim backed up until his back met the rock formation. The boy followed. No need to rush. The creature inside him must have known there was no way out for Jim. It was then that he heard the bark. He knew at once what he would see, but no amount of gumption would prepare him to see his beloved Bessie in the creature's grasp. He glanced around, trying to find somewhere free of the mist, an exit, anything. There was a dip in the rock face that might allow him to climb it. He sidled over to it, feeling the depression with his hand so he could keep his face toward the monstrosity in front of him. It was far enough away that he figured he could go for it, so he turned, forcing one knee up and into the crevice, then hoisting the rest of his body up. As he pulled the second leg up behind him, something grabbed it, sharp pain puncturing his leg in 3 places. Let go of me, damn you. He shook his leg, scrabbling for purchase in the gravel that covered the surface of the rock. It dragged him backwards, its grip like iron. His fingers were bloodied, the flesh stripped from their tips as he slid closer to the edge, no purchase to be found. Mommy. This time it wasn't the sweet voice of a child, but 1,000 voices rolled into one, garbled and strained. Women, men, children, all reflected in the depths of that one voice. As he fought harder and harder, adrenaline surging through him, it finally pulled him off the edge. He landed with a brutal impact, his face scraping against the rock before slamming into the ground. He was shaken, a buzz sounding in his head. His hand had fallen on something hard and thick. When he tightened his hand around it, he realized it was a stick, which he now grasped. It took him a moment to realize the talons had released him, replaced by something warm and wet. When he opened his eyes, Bessie was there. She lapped at his ankle, amber eyes looking up at him. Was his Bessie in there somewhere? Did she remember him? Could she fight through this? The answer came when the Bessie thing's mouth spread at the sides, a grotesque parody of a grin. As its head split open, teeth grew sharp and wicked from every bit of that mouth, and it moved to clamp down on his leg. He whipped his stick around, shoving it into its mouth, pushing as hard as he could. The Bessie claws skittered at his leg, scratching deeply as he fought to keep the horrid maw from getting to him. The bright pain brought him out of the stupor that had begun to overtake him, and he tried to pull his leg back, twisting around to find something to grab, the creature still fighting against the stick in its mouth. Against all odds, a sturdy root stuck out of a portion of the rock, cracks splintering off from it. He reached for the root, stretching his arm out ahead of him, grasping it and working his fingers over it to tighten his hold. He let go of the stick, kicked backward, and heard the Bessie thing hiss, a sound that should never sound from his old companion. It let go, and he used the root to pull himself forward and up. He stood, stumbled. Pain shot up his leg, but he ignored it and ran, limping into the mist that surrounded him, blind to which direction he ran. Shadows began to form around him, condensing in the mist, might becoming vaguely human-shaped as he blundered through the pines, branches slapping at his face. Those shapes materialized into people, taking the form of the victims who'd come before. He could hear Bessie panting along behind him. He tripped over a tree root, righted himself, and ran deeper into the mist. Clawed hands grasped at him now, nothing except arms tapering away into nothing, hidden in the blue swirls of the mist. Each tear in his skin was a white-hot flame of agony, but it spurred him on all the harder. His exhaustion began to catch up to him, his energy flagging, but he pushed himself to continue on. Just when he felt he might give up, surrender to the mist, he slammed full force into something hard. It knocked him silly, but only for a moment, and he reached his hands out to feel what it was. The feel of wood planks was a welcome relief, and he moved sideways until, sliding his hands across the surface, oblivious to the splinters forcing their way into his flesh as he did so, he reached a wall. When he found the door, he grasped the doorknob, twisting it and throwing his entire body against it to ensure it would open. It gave, and he fell inward, crashing onto the wooden floor. Quickly, he twisted his body and kicked out with his good leg, slamming the door shut against the horrors outside. It was quiet for a moment, and then he heard it. That sound he'd waited until dawn for that night so long ago. Something clawed at the door, whimpered, panted. Bessie. It killed a little piece of him, that sound, knowing it was Bessie but wasn't. He steeled himself to keep from letting her in, pressed his back against the opposite wall to stay strong. Hours later, he woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows. Silence surrounded him. He pulled himself up, pain hitting him in the absence of the adrenaline that had pushed through it all the night before. When he peered outside, he found another clear day, the deep blue of a Colorado morning sky. He pulled the front door open and looked around. Nothing. He stepped forward, his foot hitting something soft and yielding. There on his porch lay Bessie's corpse, fresh and whole, as if she had just died. With a sigh, Jim slid his feet into his shoes, laced them up, and grabbed his shovel. With one arm, he reached down and picked Bessie up. Time to get back to work. The end. You have to unmute.
Okay. Now it's a struggle, you know. I mean, I actually figured out part of what it is like when I am in this little studio thing, it's like if I don't have it like scrolled over to a certain point, I can't actually see my little microphone icon. So it's like, I like mute myself to, keep all my random noises out. And then, but nobody cares about that. But anyway, that's a great story. And yeah, we have lots of people, just saying all these great things about the story. So, and your fabulous hair.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, so let's see. Currently, we're waiting for Stephen Graham Jones to show up on here. And of course, I'm having like flashbacks to high school, where like guys would stand me up on dates. And it's like, but, that's probably just me.
Nah. Where are you?
Anyway, that was really great. So you had something come out. You had Dust Bunnies published it as a short story recently. Do you have another book coming out soon, or?
Yeah, so Dust Bunnies came out on Novel Noctule, and it's free to read online, so that's cool, the whole issue. And then I haven't posted about it because I haven't signed the contract yet. I just saw that. It's not Stories Live without Amy on mute. I just sold another story that I'm kind of excited about because I wasn't sure I was ever going to. It's called Hork, and it's about a sentient cat hairball that attacks the owner. So it was a little gross and a little out there and a little comedy. So I just sold that to Terror Tract, coming out in October. So I'm excited about that.
Ooh, awesome. So like, is that like mid-October then, or?
They haven't given me a date yet.
Okay.
So I just have that. I just know October, which is a good month for it. So I'm hoping to have another collection out then too for the holidays.
All right, awesome. Let's see. So I just got a message, and it looks like Steven's having some technical difficulties. So I'm going to pop off for a second and see if I can help figure this out. And let's see. So I'll take you off camera because I'm sure you're tired of being on there. But thank you so much for reading and talking to me in a sec. Okay, so let's see. Trying to get this figured out. Let's see. Oh. There he is. Hey. So you got in?
I'm here. Let me change.
Okay. So, yeah, glad you could make it. Sorry about the adventure. Anyway, it's so great to have you here. I'm just having like a total, hero worship moment, but I'll try not to be weird. Anyway, are you going to be reading? What are you going to be reading? Awesome. Let's see. I can't hear you.
Better?
Yeah.
All right. Great.
Yeah.
I don't need these then.
Okay.
All right. All right. Yeah, I'm going to read the prologue from the Only Good Indians, if that works.
That works for me. So.
All right. When do you want me to take off?
Oh, what's up?
When do you want me to go? Right now?
Oh, yeah. You can go ahead and go right now.
Wonderful. Got to put on my specs here. Thanks, everybody, for being here. All right, this is set in Williston, North Dakota. I don't know if you can see that. I guess that's not Williston. That's just the words Williston. And the reason it's there, well, I guess it's two reasons. I didn't ever notice this, but in the advanced reading copies of this that got sent out all around, it didn't say Williston, North Dakota. It said prologue because I had not put a chapter name on this, what I call the zero chapter. And and so I had to call the publisher at the last minute and say, please change this. The reason being that I know there's a whole lot of people out there who don't read the prologues to anything. They don't differentiate between prologue and introduction and what's that other one? Prologue, introduction. there's a PRE word. What is that? I can't remember that. Anyways, they think it's all stuff you can skip. And in a novel, a prologue matters a lot. It sets the stage for everything. So I went back and put Williston, North Dakota there. And Williston, North Dakota is where Louise Erdrich's first novel, Love Medicine, starts out. It's a character named June Morrissey takes a doorknob and walks out into a blizzard and kind of dies out there. Not to spoil anything, the novel came out in, 81, 82? So this is my way of kind of honoring June Morrissey, or June Cashpaw, she is also known. And just saying thanks to Louise Erdrich, I guess. All right. Williston, North Dakota. The headline for Richard Bossribs would be Indian Man Killed in Dispute Outside Bar. That's one way to say it. Ricky had hired on with the drilling crew over in North Dakota. Because he was the only Indian, he was chief. Because he was new and probably temporary, he was always the one getting sent down to guide the chain. Each time he came back with all his fingers, he would flash thumbs up all around the platform to show how he was lucky, and none of this was ever going to touch him. Ricky Bossribs. He'd split from the reservation all at once when his little brother Cheeto had overdosed in someone's living room. The television, Ricky was told, tuned to that camera that just looks down on the IGA parking lot all the time. That was the part Ricky couldn't stop cycling through his head. That's the channel only the serious old of the elders watched. It was just a running reminder how shit the reservation was, how boring, how nothing. And his little brother didn't even watch normal television much, couldn't sit still for it, would have been reading comic books if anything. Instead of shuffling around the wake and standing out at the family plot up behind East Glacier, everybody parked on the logging road behind it so they'd have to come right up to the graves and turn their cars around. Ricky ran away to North Dakota. His plan was Minneapolis. He knew some cats there. But then halfway there, the oil crew had been hiring and said they liked Indians because of their built-in cold resistance. It meant they might not slip off in winter. Ricky, sitting in the orange doghouse trailer for that interview, had nodded, yeah, Blackfeet didn't care about the cold. And no, he wouldn't leave them short-handed in the middle of a week. What he didn't say was that you don't get cold resistant because your jackets suck. You just stop complaining about it after a while because complaining doesn't make you any warmer. He also didn't say that first paycheck he was gone to Minneapolis. Bye. The foreman interviewing him had been thick and windburned and sort of blonde with a beard like a Brillo pad. When he reached across the table to shake Ricky's hand and look him in the eye while he did it, the modern world had fallen away for a long blink, and the two of them were standing in a canvas tent, the foreman in a cavalry jacket. And Ricky already had designs on that jacket's brass buttons, wasn't thinking at all of the paper on the table between them that he just made his mark on. This had been happening more and more to him the last few months, ever since hunting went bad last winter, and right up through the interview to now, not even stopping for Cheeto dying on that couch. Cheeto hadn't been his born name, but he had freckles and orange hair, so it wasn't a name he could shake either. Ricky wondered how the funeral had gone. He wondered if right now there was a big muley nosing up to the chicken wire fence around all these dead Indians. He wondered what that big muley saw, really, if it was just waiting all these two-leggers out. Cheeto would have thought it was a pretty deer, Ricky figured. He had never been a kid to get up early with Ricky to be out in the trees when the light broke. He hadn't liked killing anything except bears. Probably would have been vegetarian if that was an option on the res. His orange hair put enough of a bullseye on his back, though. Eating rabbit food would have just got more dumb Indians lining up to put him down. But then he died on that couch anyway, not even from anybody else, just from himself, at which point Ricky figured he'd get out as well. Screw it. Sure, he could be this crew's chain monkey for a week or two. Yeah, he could sleep forward to a doghouse with all these white boys, the wind rocking the trailer. No, he didn't mind being chief, though he knew that had he been around back in the days of raiding and running down buffalo, he'd have been a grunt then as well. Whatever the bow and arrow version of a chain monkey was, that'd be Ricky Bossribs' station. When he was a kid, there'd been a picture book in the library about heads smashed in, or whatever it was called, the buffalo jump, where the old-time Blackfeet ran herd after herd off the cliff. Ricky remembered that the boy selected to drape a calf robe over his shoulders and run out in front of all these buffalo. He'd been the one to win all the races the elders had put him and all the other kids in. And he'd been the one to climb all the trees the best because you needed to be fast to run ahead of all those tons of meat. You needed good hands, too. At the last moment after sailing off the cliff, grab onto the rope the men had already left there that would tuck you up under, safe. What had it been like? What had it been like sitting there while the buffalo flowed down through the air within arm's reach, bellowing, their legs probably stiff because they didn't know for sure when the ground was coming? What had it felt like bringing meat to the whole tribe? They'd almost done it last Thanksgiving. Him and Gabe and Lewis and Cass, they'd meant to. They were going to be those kinds of Indians for once. They had been going to show everybody in Browning that this is the way it's done. But then the big wet snow had come in and everything had gone pretty much straight to hell, leaving Ricky out here in North Dakota like he didn't know any better than to come in out of the cold. Fuck it. All he was going to hunt in Minneapolis was tacos and a bed. But until then, this beer would work. The bar was all roughnecks, wall to wall. No fights yet, but give it time. There was another Indian, Dakota probably, nursing a bottle in a corner by the pool tables. He'd acknowledged Ricky, and Ricky had nodded back, but there was as much distance between the two of them as there was between Ricky and his crew. More important, there was a blonde waitress balancing a tray of empties between and among. 50 sets of eyes were tracking her easy. To Ricky, she looked like the tall girl Lewis had run off with to Great Falls with in July, but she'd probably already left his ass, meaning now Lewis was sitting in a bar down there, just like this one, peeling the label off his beer, just the same. Ricky looked at his bottle in greeting across all the miles. 4 beers and 9 country songs later, he was standing in line for the urinal, except the line was snaking all back down the hall already. And the last time he'd been in there, there'd already been guys pissing in the trash can and the sink both. The air in there was gritty and yellow, almost crunched between Ricky's teeth when he'd accidentally opened his mouth. It wasn't any worse than the honeypots out at the rig, but out at the rig, he could just unzip wherever, let fly. Ricky backed out, drained his beer because the cops love an Indian with a beer bottle in the great outdoors, and made to push his way out for a breath of fresh air, maybe a fence post in desperate need of watering. At the exit, the bouncer opened his meaty hand against Ricky's chest, warned him about leaving. Something about the head count and the fire marshal. Ricky looked past the open door to the clump of roughnecks and cowboys waiting to come in, their eyes flashing up to him, but not asking for anything. It was a queue Ricky would have to mill around in to wait his turn to get back in. But it was starting to not really be his decision anymore, right? Inside of maybe 90 seconds here, he was going to be peeing. So anyway, he could up the chances of being someplace where he could do that without making a mess of himself. Well, he could stand a 30-minute line to eyeball that blonde waitress some more. Sure. Ricky turned sideways to slip past the bouncer, nodding that he knew what he was doing, and already a roughneck was stepping forward to take his place. There wasn't even any time to stiff-leg it over beside the bar by the steaming pile of bags the dumpsters were. Ricky just walked straight ahead out into the sea of crew cab trucks parked more or less in rows. And on the way, he unleashed, almost before he could come to a stop, had to lean back from it because this was a serious fire hose situation. He closed his eyes from the purest pleasure he'd felt in weeks, and when he opened them, he had the feeling he wasn't alone anymore. He steeled himself. Only stupid Indians brushed past a bunch of hard-handed white dudes, each of them sure that seat you had in the bar should have by right been theirs. They're cool with the chief among them being the chain monkey, but when it comes down to who has an eyeline on the white woman, well, that's another thing altogether, isn't it? Stupid, Ricky told himself. Stupid, stupid, stupid. He looked ahead to the hood he was going to hip slide over. The bed of the truck he hoped wasn't piled with ankle-breaking equipment because that was his next step. A clump of white men can beat an Indian into the ground. Yeah, no doubt about it. Happens every weekend up here on the High Line. But they have to catch his ass first. And now that he was, by his figure, and about 3 fluid pounds lighter, and sobering up fast, no way was even the ex-running back of them going to hook a finger into Ricky's shirt. Ricky grinned a tight-lipped grin to himself and nodded for courage, dislodging all the rifles he couldn't keep stacked up in his head, rifles that were actually behind the seat of his truck back at the site. When he'd left Browning, he'd taken them all, even his uncles and granddads. They were all in the same closet by the front door, and then grabbed a gallon baggie of random shells, figuring some of them had to fit these guns. The idea had been that he was going to need stake money when he hit Minneapolis, and rifles turned to cash faster than just about anything. Except then he'd found work along the way, and he'd got to thinking about his uncles needing to fill the freezer for the winter. Standing in the sprawling parking lot of the Roughneck Bar in North Dakota, Ricky promised to mail every one of those back. Would he have to pull the bolts, though? Mail them in separate packages from the rifles so the rifles wouldn't really be rifles anymore? Ricky didn't know, but he did know that right now he wanted that pump 30-06 in his hands to shoot if it came to that, but mostly just to swing around the open end of the barrel, leaving half moons in cheeks and eyebrows and rib cages, the butt perfect for jaws. He might be going down in this parking lot in a puddle of his own piss, but these grimy white boys were going to remember this Blackfeet and think twice the next time they saw one of him walking into their bar. If only Gabe were here. Gabe liked this kind of shit, playing cowboys and Indians in all the parking lots of the world. He'd do his stupid war whoop and just rush the hell in. It might as well have been 150 years ago for him, every single day of his ridiculous life. When you're with him, though, with Gabe, Ricky narrowed his eyes, nodded to himself again for strength. To fake it, anyway. To try to be like Gabe here. When Ricky was with Gabe, he'd always want to give a whoop like that, too. The kind that made it where, when he turned around to face these white boys, it'd feel like he was holding a tomahawk in his hand. It'd feel like his face was painted in harsh, crumbly blacks and whites, maybe a single finger-wide line of red on the right side. The years can just fall away, man. So, Ricky said, his hands balled into fists, chest already heaving, and turned around to get this over with, his teeth clenched tight, so that if he was turning around into a fist, it wouldn't rattle him too much. But no one? What the, Ricky said, cutting himself off because there was something, yeah. A huge dark form clambering over a pearly white, out-of-place 280Z. Not a horse either, like he'd knee-jerked into his head. Ricky had to smile. This was an elk, wasn't it? A big, meaty spike. Too dumb to know this was where the people went, not the animals. It blew once through its nostrils and launched into the truck to its right, leaving the pretty sloped-down hood of that little Nissan tacoed up at the edges, stomped all down in the middle. But at least the car had been quiet about it. The truck the elk had slammed into was much more insulted, screaming its shrill alarm loud enough that the spike grabbed onto the ground with all four hooves. Instead of the 20 logical pats it could have taken away from this sound, it scrabbled up across the loud truck's hood, fell off into the between space on the other side. And now that drunk little elk was banging into another truck and another. All the alarms were going off, all the lights going back and forth. What is into you, man? Ricky said to the spike, impressed. The feeling didn't last long. Now the spike was turned around, was barreling down an aisle between the cars. Ricky right in its path, its head down like a mature bull. Ricky threw himself to the side into another truck, setting off another alarm. You want some of me? Ricky yelled at the elk, reaching over into the bed of a random truck. He came up with a jawless, oversized crescent wrench that would be a good enough deterrent, he figured. He hoped. Never mind he was outweighed by a cool 500 pounds. Never mind that elk don't do this. When he heard the spike blow behind him, he turned, already swinging, crashing the crescent wrench's round head into the side mirror of a tall Ford. The big Ford's alarm screamed, flashed every light it had, and when Ricky turned around and shuffling hooves behind him, it wasn't hooves this time, but boots. All the roughnecks and cowboys wanted to get into the bar. Ricky said, holding the wrench like a tire beater, every second truck in his immediate area flashing in pain and showing the pounding they'd just taken. He saw it too, saw them seeing it. This Indian had got himself mistreated in the bar, didn't know who drove what, so he was taking it out on every truck in the parking lot. Typical. Momentarily, one of these white boys was going to say something about Ricky being off the reservation, and then what was supposed to happen could get proper started. Unless Ricky say, maybe wanted to live. He dropped the wrench into the slush, held his hand out, said, no, you don't understand. But they did. When they stepped forward to put him down in time-honored fashion, Ricky turned, flopped half over the 280Z he hadn't trashed, endured a bad moment when somebody's reaching fingers were hooked into a belt loop, but he spun his hips hard, tore through, fell down in the head, his hands to the ground for a few overbalanced steps. A beer bottle whipped by his head, shattered on a grill guard right in front of him, and he threw his hands up to keep his eyes safe, veered what he thought was around that truck, but not enough. His hip caught the last upright of the guard, spun him around. into another truck with another stupid alarm. Fuck you, he yelled at the truck, to all the trucks, all the cowboys, just North Dakota and oil fields in America in general. And then, running hard down a lane between trucks, hitching himself ahead with more mirrors, 2 of them coming off in his hands, he felt a smile all up on his face. Gabe's smile. This is what it feels like then. Yes, Ricky screamed, the rush of adrenaline and fear sloshing up behind his eyes, crashing over his every thought. He turned around and ran backwards so he could point with both hands at the roughnecks. 4 steps into this big, important gesture, he fell out into open space, kind of like a turn row in a plowed field. Caught his left boot on a heel, his left boot heel on a rock or frozen clump of bullshit grass, went sprawling. Behind him, he could see dark shapes vaulting over whole truck beds, their cowboy hats lifting with them, not coming down, just becoming part of the night. White boys can move, he said to himself, less certain of all this, had pivoted. Rose was moving again, too. When the footfalls and boot slaps were too close enough he couldn't handle it, knew this was it. Ricky grabbed a fiberglass dually fender, used it to swing himself a sharp and sudden 90 degrees into what would have been the truck's long side, what should have been its side, but he was sliding now. He was going under, leading with the slick heels of his work boots. This was the kind of getting away he learned at 12 years old, when he could slither and snake. The truck was just tall enough for him to slide under, through the muck, his momentum carrying him halfway across. To get across the rest of the truck's width, he reached up for a handhold, the skin of his palm on the underside of his fingers immediately smoking from the 3-inch exhaust pipe. Ricky yelped but kept moving, came up on the other side of the truck fast enough that he slammed into a beater. He slammed into a beater that didn't have an alarm. 2 truck lengths ahead, the dark shapes were pulling their best 180, casting left and right for the Indian. Duck, Ricky told himself, and disappeared. Ran at a crouch that felt military, like he was in a trench, like shells were flying. They might as well be. There he is, a roughneck bellowed, and his voice was far enough off that Ricky knew he was wrong, that they were about to pile onto somebody else for 10 or 20 seconds until they realized this was no Indian. 10 trucks between him and them, finally. Ricky stood to his full height to make sure it wasn't that Dakota dude catching the heat. I'm right here, Ricky said to the roughnecks, not really loud enough. Then turned, stepped through the last line of trucks, out into the ditch of the narrow ribbon of blacktop that had brought him here, that ran between the bar's parking lot and miles of frozen grasslands. So it was going to be a walking night then, a hiding from every pair of headlights night, a cold night. Good thing I'm Indian, he told himself, sucking in to get the zipper on his jacket started. Cold doesn't matter to Indians, does it? He snorted a laugh, flipped the whole bar off without turning around, just an over-the-shoulder thing with his smoldering hand, then stepped up onto the faded asphalt right as a bottle burst beside his boot. He flinched, drew in, looked behind him to the mass of shadows that were just arms and legs and crew cuts now moving over the trucks. They'd seen him, made his Indian silhouette out against all this pale frozen grass. He hissed a pissed-off blast of air through his teeth, shook his head once side to side, and straight-legged across the asphalt to see how committed they might be. They want an Indian bad enough tonight to run out into the open prairie in November, or would it be enough just to run him off? Instead of trusting the gravel and ice of the opposite shoulder, Ricky took it as a slide, let his momentum stand him up again, up once his boot heels caught grass, then transferred all that into a leaning forward run that was going to have been a fall even if he hadn't caught the top strand of the fence in the gut. He flipped over easy as anything, the strand giving up its staples halfway through, just to be sure his face planted all the way into the crunchy grass on the other side. Ricky rolled over, his face to the wash of stars spread against all the blackness, and considered that he maybe should have just stayed home, gone to Cheeto's funeral. He maybe shouldn't have stolen his family's guns. He maybe should have never even left the res at all. He was right. When he stood, there was a sea of green eyes staring back at him from right there, where there was just supposed to be frozen grass and distance. There was a great herd of elk waiting, blocking him in, and there was a great herd pressing behind him too. A herd of men already on the blacktop themselves, their voices rising, hands balled into fists, eyes flashing light. Indian man killed in dispute outside bar. That's one way to say it. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Yeah, let's see. I guess I'll just bring out our other authors here. This is missing. Okay. Well, so people have been commenting on your office, and I'm just wondering, like, is there a theme with sketches on the wall?
Theme? No, it's just books and art. That's pretty much all. And a deer head. I got a deer head up here, and data is right here. You can't see data, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, we got Shannon back. Shannon, do you want to come back? Okay. So you two have been at together before, I think.
Yeah. It's been a while since we've been to cons. Cons are gone.
Yeah. So I don't know. Have either of you been anywhere since all this started?
No, I haven't. I mean, just the store, you know, and carry out at Chipotle. That's pretty much it.
I just live on my sofa now.
Yeah, life goals, right? Okay. Oh, here we go. We got Jeamus. Well, so let's bring him out. Okay. So all right. Now we've got all our people. Do I have you muted? Okay. So Jeamus, do you have sound?
I'm sorry. There's a really bad echo. I'm having a hard time understanding.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why.
It's kind of a cool effect, except you can't understand what you're saying. We should all have an echo just when we want to.
Yeah, it's that kind of night. But anyway, I mean, how has it been like writing for all of you with the pandemic and everything?
Well, I was working, so I'm glad to be done with that whole working thing now. But I kind of like being at home most of the time and people not being allowed to come near me when I'm in public. So
Yeah, I've been just doing a whole lot of work, a lot of projects, a lot of deadlines. So it's not about whether I want to write; it's just I have to write, you know.
how many deadlines do you have right now?
Oh man, I don't even know. If I think about it, I probably will just shut down, you know.
Yeah. One at a time.
Yeah.
We've had to march forward with normal life. So much that tomorrow I'm getting married. So no, it's just one of those weird things where we're gonna do it legally, and then if there's ever a time that we can, have a big social gathering, we'll do that. You can't postpone life. You have to move forward. So it's weird in that aspect, but also it's forcing us to be creative. So tomorrow will be fun. It'll be different, but we'll see.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's so cool. And we've got this ominous echo.
That's why I was hiding in the room before, so I could watch this on my phone, because I could actually hear it better on my phone than in here. So that when I've got my phone muted, so it's not me, but I was afraid to bring it up like a different window on the YouTube thing. So
Yeah. I YouTube open on the window and I close it. Maybe that's doing it. I don't know.
Hopefully, I'm not the one.
This would be perfect for a space-themed reading.
It would be, yeah, or like the bottom of a well or something.
This is what it
Anyway,
sounds like on spaceships, so just get used to it.
Stephen, I just need to let you know, like, I'm personally responsible for like one particularly long night I had because I started reading it. I had to finish it, but I was like, oh my God, what did I do to myself? Because it was like, the middle of the night.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. It's a very creepy book. So, like, the creepiest book.
Thank you.
Which I'm sure was intentional. So.
I like it. He gets like those great reviews sometimes in the books where they're like, "This is too much," and then I'm like, "Well, now I really have to read it." Like, that was gross. That was wrong. Well, okay, most of us out there who like horror, we're going to read it because of your review. So thank you.
Exactly. It's like there's a squirt and a crunch. I'm reading it.
Yep.
Totally. Yeah. So let's see. I'm just trying to think. I mean, is there anything? I mean, I guess even you probably want to, head off soon. Is there anything you wanted to share about like what you have coming up or anything? Or do you have any other like at least like virtual readings planned?
Yeah, I got what this is coming out. Can you see it?
Oh,
that's not my fingers. That's the cover.
Cool.
Yeah, this comes out September 1st from Tor.com.
Jeez. So you've just got all the things going on.
I don't. It's just a clump together. It seems like a lot right now. Yeah.
I think Ellen Datlow posted about that coming out, and then do you have a short story or a novella coming out that same day?
Oh, actually, yeah, September 2nd, I have a story coming out on Tor.com. That's right, yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, anything else? Now, I'm actually curious, like, did you grow up in North Dakota or did you, like, I always think of you as a Colorado person, but, you mentioned North Dakota.
I've only been in Colorado the last 12 years, and I've been in Colorado. Before that, I was West Texas.
Oh.
Never lived in North Dakota, no.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
So whereabout in West Texas, Stephen? I am from El Paso.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was in Midland, so that's halfway between Fort Worth and El Paso.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
I'm not from Texas. I just
No.
wanted to be a part of that conversation. My husband is from Gainesville, Texas, so maybe not that far from you guys.
Nice.
Pretty far, but yeah.
I'm surprised how many people I run into who are from West Texas.
Oh.
Around
Really?
here.
Huh.
Hmm.
Huh.
I don't know why.
That's neat.
They're just coming up to Colorado.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, do you miss it, Stephen?
No.
Yeah. Kind of figured. Yeah, makes
What
sense.
about you, Jeamus?
No. Yeah, and El
answer I'm
Paso
used
is
to for
about
that.
as far west as you can possibly get in Texas. So, no.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, all of the complaints about the Colorado weather right now. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's for Colorado. It's been hot, but I'm very much used to this, and but not in a good way. So I'm looking forward to autumn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's been really disgusting, and I'm definitely ready for fall to be here. And that's what I'm blaming my lack of inspiration on. But, I mean, I don't have anybody waiting for books that I'm writing. So I'm like, that's another thing. It's kind of like, whatever. I can hang. It's fine. But, yeah, I mean, does anybody want to head out, and I can bring the Dollhouse Thieves up here and, torture somebody else with Q&A?
Well, I wanted to thank you for having us tonight, Amy. This was a blast. It was
Yeah.
a lot of fun, and the music took it up a notch. For most of these, and I love all of them. Don't get me wrong, but the music was really nice and
Awesome.
added something really cool. So, thank you, Dollhouse Thieves.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for throwing this. We need more book events. This is great.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you for coming. And Shannon, did you want to stick around, or do you want to go, or like, what are you feeling?
Can stay or go. I can go eat.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll bring up the Dollhouse Thieves and let you guys do authorly things.
All right.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, Amy. Thank you. Good night,
care.
Shannon. Good night, Stephen.
Night.
All right. All right. Hi.
Hello.
So you've got the little one. Is that what's her name? Clara?
Clara, yeah.
Oh.
She got this chair literally during this event tonight, so she's very excited to be on the chair.
Awesome.
Yeah, we had a great time listening to those wonderful authors, and that was such a wonderful event, and what a fun pairing. Like, we love collaborating with other creators and cool folks, and meeting people in this wonderful community in Colorado. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was really fun. Thank you.
So I forgot to oh, poor baby.
Like, I wanted ducks. So, toddlers.
Yeah, little people, limited vocabulary. It's okay. It happens.
It's frustrating.
But so do you have any albums out or anything? Like, what's happening with that?
Yeah, so we released our first album in the summer of 2018. We were all ready to record this year, and then COVID happened, so we're kind of on a hiatus right now. We have been only doing shows from home. We're typically a full band with 5 members total, but we've been mostly doing shows just from our living room right here, the two of us. So it's been a different format. We're all adjusting, and it's been interesting and still fun. We miss our bandmates, and as we find a way to navigate through childcare and recording, once it's safe to do so again, we'll look forward to doing that and releasing another album. So yay.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I remember I don't know. I mean, I know I mentioned this like in our little host chat thing, but yeah, I think I first found out about you guys like through, like, I went to Fiction Beer Company, and you were playing the New Year's Eve party there, and I mean, it had just been an awful year, but that was an awesome show. And
Thank you.
And then I think you did that tribute show at Black Shirt Brewery, and that was actually when I discovered candied bacon, and there was the whole thing. So that was a good night.
Oh, that sounds like an amazing night.
Yeah,
we were actually drinking Fiction beer through the show, so that's
awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. It's good to just have a little bit of that magical stuff, that I remember from, when I first got to Denver and I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool place. And now, it's like everybody's like hunkered down and like, oh, don't touch me. So,
Oh, thanks for putting us on. This is such a great series, and it's really creative and it's unique. So, and we were happy to be a part of it. It was fun.
yeah, well, it was really good to have you here. And yeah, I mean, if you want to ever come back or anything, just let me know. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for taking some time and doing this. I mean, I know it's challenging, recording stuff from your living room, especially, with a little person who wants all of the attention.
She gets a little upset when I bust out the guitar.
Oh, no.
You're not going to give me all your undying attention. So I usually do a lot of wheels on the bus and songs before I can start writing or playing. So I typically do, but it's fun. She's a sweet girl.
I felt so bad for her, like with that with the thing your guitar does, where when it runs out of battery, it just does like.
Yeah, before the show when the battery died, it was really loud. It's just that's one feature of that Taylor guitar. It doesn't give me an indication of when the battery's dying. So when the battery dies, it is I think definitely one of the scariest parts of the night for her anyway, because it was very loud and spooky. So it put us all in the right mindset, I guess.
Well, and I felt bad because I know that, like, when that first happened, I was like, I must have had this look like, oh my God, what is that sound?
We all did. Like, what is that?
And then, you reached over and I was like, was that like a phone? And was it like a really weird acoustic thing that happened? I don't know. And,
and it just sets out like a horrific death cry when it dies, when it's plugged in. I'm glad it didn't happen during the show. So
yeah, it's true. Yeah. But yeah, I was just, explaining for anybody who, because thank God they missed that. But, it's just like, yeah, it was a very sad noise. I don't know. You'd think, something would just have a discreet beep, like, oh, yeah. Charge me, please.
Or just turn off. That would be good too. But
yeah, it's like either one. But yeah, that was kind of horrific. But yeah, thank you for, bringing the dark, spooky sounds. And yeah, I mean, it would be great to have you back, anytime. And yeah, I mean, that's about all I've got, just other than the standard, Angela Johnson, thank you for coming thing. But
no, it's all good.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you. Well, have a good night. And, I hope Clara recovers. She's not like traumatized by guitars forever or anything.
She's around us. She's around a lot of loud sounds.
All right. So all right. Cool. Well, have a good night, Nikki.
You too. Thanks, Amy.
Okay. Bye-bye. Yeah, so that's our show tonight. Please give this video a like and subscribe if you can. Well, I mean, you can, it's free, but, you can hit the little bell, to get notified whenever we have new uploads. The next live show that we're doing is going to be Hot for Teacher. And that is actually, you know what? I am going to actually look at this on my calendar just to make sure I don't give anyone the wrong information. So it is going to be on September 16th at 7 p.m. I think at the moment we actually have a full roster of readers. But, if you do have a story that you really, really want to tell that's related to teachers, which can include like school teachers, mentors, whatever, it could be a workshop, it doesn't, anybody you've ever idolized, really. I mean, that fits with the theme. I mean, these are, very loose themes. And, if you're interested in planning farther out, In October, we have the Spirit Realm as the theme. Again, I think I have a few people for that, but again, if you're interested, feel free to PM me. We have a group on Facebook called Stories Live, and you can join. Send me a message or post or whatever, and I'm more than happy to consider adding you. Or if you just want to be added to whatever's open, let me know that too. November, the theme's apartment life. So just anything related to living spaces. I don't know. Seems kind of cool, like especially at a time when, it's traditionally related to family entertaining, and a lot of us are more likely than not probably going to be stuck at home, may or may not be able to see family. So I'm just kind of interested in how people are thinking about that. And December, the theme is gifts. And, I'll be posting those dates closer. I think that they are actually in the events section of our group right now, if you want to check them and, get ahead of the situation. But anyway, thank you so much for showing up and for being here and for all your comments. Oh, yes, and Katie Webster's reading next month in Hot for Teacher. Somebody asked me that in the comments. Yes, he's not getting out of it that easy. So anyway, thank you, everyone, and I will see you soon. All right, bye-bye.